Hey everyone, and thank you for being here in our live. We are with Porsche Mysticque Steele. She is one of my friends from Clubhouse that I have discovered has an amazing way to explain storytelling. So I coerced her to this live. Unfortunately, we couldn't be live with you because she is in Nigeria. And so we wanted to be kind to her timeline. We pre-taped this live for you so that you can watch the recording, but it'll have all the value. And I promise I will be here with you in the comments in the chat. So we're going to just pop right in and let's go. So tell me a little bit about yourself, because I know we're new friends and I'm like, okay, I need to know all about my new friend. So tell me more about your story. And also, like, I just am super curious how you ended up in Nigeria.
Oh, that's a good one. Okay, yes. So I'm originally from
Well,
Pittsburgh,
again,
Pennsylvania.
also introduce yourself again to your name and your
Oh,
title. Sorry, I forgot.
yes. Okay. So yes, my name is Porsche Mysticque Steele. I'm an independent book publishing expert and the CEO of Mystique Rose Publishing Services. I help coaches combine their story and their wisdom to publish highly impactful books that generate income, influence, and elevates them to thought leadership. That's me. There you go. So, how did I get to Nigeria? Oh my God. So, I'm actually born and raised in Pittsburgh, PA. And as far as I know, I don't have any Nigerians in my family. So, let's just get that out of the way. That's a question that everybody asks me. No, I'm not Nigerian. Uh, so, what happened was in like 2015, I was online and I met a guy and we fell in love and we dated for 5 years. And then I came to Nigeria to see if we would vibe in person. But the day I arrived, he proposed to me. So I said yes. We got married 3 months later and we've been married for 3 years. We had our third year anniversary in December.
Oh my God, I love that love story. That's amazing. You get off the plane and there's like an engagement ring there. That's
Yeah,
great.
like oh god, it was insane. And then he like pretended that he wasn't in the same city I was in, so it was like a whole surprise and everything. It was crazy.
Oh, I love that. That's cool. And you guys have been able to make it work, and now you relocated to Nigeria. So you're
Yeah, for the time being, yeah. I mean, I say that like it was supposed to be temporary, but like it's been 3 years now, so
so girl, you in Nigeria.
yeah, like I mean, I'm here. It's just what it is. So,
That's
after we
cool.
got married and we just fell deeply in love. I mean, we were already in love. Like we were dating online for 5 years, so we were already in love. But it was during COVID, so there was the whole lockdown situation. So we just had to kind of stick it out and work it out. And that time just really solidified our bond. And I was like, yeah, I'm staying here.
Yeah, I know. It's cool. I mean, like I said, I had lived in Africa for a part of my life and I love living and I like traveling around Africa. I think it's just cool to see how many different types of cultures, tribes, languages, people, like
Yeah.
histories, like all kinds of different things. Such a rich experience to be able to live a portion of your life somewhere on the continent. So, like, I think it'll be valuable time, even if you don't stay there forever. Um, but but you have a business that you're running from there, right?
Yeah, I do. It is US based. It is the US based business, but all of our work is virtual. Only rarely do I have to meet somebody in person. So I have the ability to kind of work from anywhere in the world.
Yeah, I love that. That's the digital nomad vibe. That's why we hang out in the space that we do in the Escape the 9 to 5
Exactly.
club with Alessandro, because that's totally like everybody in there's goal is to be a digital nomad. So I love it.
Yep.
And when I was thinking about, how you use some of your accounts, some of your assets online, because that's what this week's theme is, I mentioned to you in the Uplevel Your Story Challenge, we're talking about assets this week. And so with this live, I wanted to focus on two different ways to think about assets. One, the digital assets that we have access to, or even the print assets. You talk about books, but
Mhm.
what are the things like magazine articles or podcasts or any of those things that we have as a vehicle to tell our story? How do we start leveraging those assets to really do ourselves justice, build our businesses, build our nonprofits, make a bigger impact? But then also on the flip side of that, knowing that the word assets also equals money. And a lot of the times, even we're talking about the Nigerian prince scam, right? Like we're over here like, hey, we're trying to make sure we're not getting scammed when we're doing this work, this impact work. These are legit organizations. How do we make sure people tell the story of their impact so that they can get the assets, right? Whether that's grants or donors or any of that. Like, how do people start telling using their story to build confidence and connection with their audiences? So those are the two themes for today's conversation. And I wanted to just let you jump off into any part of it you've been thinking about. Like, what do you think about this duality of an idea of assets, and where would you start in talking to your audience about how to use their assets correctly?
It's actually just perfect that we're having this conversation because I'm working on my newest book right now, and I'm on chapter 5, and this chapter is talking about how your story is your asset. Like in and of itself, your story is like your intellectual property, and you have the ability to leverage it in any way you want to, but you just have to know how to unlock that power. So for me, I tell my clients that you have to be able to tell your story from a place of authenticity, and then use that story with whatever knowledge you have, because when you combine it, it's like you complete the formula. Once it's created, it's like this perfect equation. I'm a math geek, so like once this formula is like perfect, all the variables have been figured out, you've solved for X, you're good to go. You can then use that on various stages. So in my case, for me, speaking is like my thing, right? That's the thing that I often go after. And so since I'm a powerful speaker, I can use my story to leverage that. And so the best way that I did that is through TEDx. So I'm delivering a TEDx talk next month. And in that is my story. Like as I'm standing on stage, you're going to hear my story plus the knowledge that I'm giving you. So when you combine the two, it just becomes powerful for the audience.
That's super cool. I love this concept that is the asset that you have to use. But you're talking about like the formula, and I don't know that people know that there is a formula to giving a really successful talk. Can you explain a little bit more about that idea?
Yeah, I mean, for the talk itself, I'm definitely just not learning that formula. Don't even know if I can articulate it. I'm still being coached on how to deliver a powerful TEDx talk. And so I've had a lot of help along the way. But what I do know is the formula for creating a powerful book. And that is combining your story with your wisdom and your overall message to deliver impact. So like that's the equation itself, right? So the equation for a book would be your story plus your wisdom plus your messaging equals impact. So you have to have those three things to deliver something, some form of transformation for your readers. And then once the book is done and it delivers on that, then you can use that book to get on podcasts, get on stages, be a paid speaker. And when we're talking about like assets in the form of money, you have to know how to use your book in your business. So that's creating the master classes, using the book to create an online course, that sort of thing.
Here you go. If you're just tuning in tonight, you're seeing me use my microphone with it being muted. So this is our Social Impact Level Up Live. This is part of our series of Up-Level Your Story. And if you're tuning in tonight, our guest is Porsche Mysticque Steele. We did tape this episode earlier today because she is in Nigeria hanging out, going to sleep probably at this hour. And we are here online. So to honor her time, we did tape the portion with her in the episode earlier. But I'm popping in periodically to make sure that you're still here, you're still listening, you're still engaged, and that if you have any questions you want to drop into the chat. We're just getting into the meat of the conversation. She's going to start giving us some really amazing information about what to put in a book and how to tell your story in a book. And this is the part where Porsche really shines because she is an absolute expert at this, and you can totally tell. So let's get back to hanging out with Portia, listening to the rest of her conversation that we had earlier today. And also my feed gets really wonky in this part of the video. I tried to clean it up a bit, but it's just kind of all over the place. So never mind what I look like, focus on Portia. All right, here we go. This is the second part of our interview.
Realize that when you're attempting to do something like that, it's not really about you, which is crazy, right? Because it's your story. You think, yeah, it should be about me, but it's not. You're not telling your story for yourself. If you were, you'd be journaling or writing it in a diary. You're putting it into a book that's going to be released to the world. So it's not you. It's not about you. It's about the audience. So as you tell your story, you have to ask yourself, is this story going to help my audience, or am I telling it to stroke my own ego? Because the moment you do that, well, you fail to use your story as an asset. I would say, lessen the impact of your story and your messaging, and you hurt yourself, even financially, because books are less likely to sell when it just is about you 24/7.
Yeah, and I was fortunate when I did this chapter. There was a group of women healers who were all coming together for this particular book, and we went through this whole conversation in our editing process about finding those bits of ego in the chapters and being able to kind of like wash them away, and what people were doing to recognize that coming through in the writing, even if it wasn't intentional. It was just a sense of like another editing check you could do to your work to be able to ask that question. And I think it is a powerful question, because then you're saying, well, is this really going to be transformational for someone else? Or am I just trying to provide transformation for myself right now?
Exactly. Like, the best thing I have my authors do is, like, when you have the manuscript down, and in your case, just a chapter, when you have the chapter, you want to take two different colors, yellow and pink. Highlight all the words that say I, me, or my in yellow, and highlight all the words that say you, your, we, or ours in pink. If you have more yellow than you have pink, then it's about you. And it doesn't help. You got to convert those yellows into pinks.
That's a really good example of like just visually, if you're not a visual learner, but if you just see it, you can analyze the data you have because you've been able to see the yellow and the pink ratio.
Exactly.
Okay. Let me do this. Yeah, that's really cool. That's a good trick. And it's a really good tip. So if you guys didn't catch that, make sure you're replaying this and highlighting accordingly, or at least deciding your own key with whatever color highlighters you have, as long as you know what it is. And I think it's cool when you're talking about people telling their story in order to get assets, in order to get on stages or to have their own book, and to be able to, get money in the door or have people, support them in some way monetarily. But the exchange is, a peek into their life experience, into what, they've been able to overcome, into whatever their story is. So do you find like, I think this is another kind of hang up I've heard from people, that they don't think that anybody's going to want to pay to read their story. Do you find this with the people that you work with? Because I've heard this one before.
Everybody says that. And that's what cracks me up, is that almost every author I've ever worked with have said that in the beginning. Well, nobody's going to want to read my story. Why would they care about what I've been through? And I have to let them know, again, it's not about you. Even as you ask yourself that question, why would they care about me? You're making it about you. Remember, when we decide the bits of our stories that we're going to share, we're sharing it specifically for the audience to get something out of it. So they care because the story is actually about them. Yes, you're talking about yourself, but you're sharing it for them to get transformation. So they'll care. Now, if your book is 100% about you and the reader doesn't get anything out of it, then yeah, we're not going to care. We're not going to care unless you're a celebrity or we know you personally. We're not going to care to read this book. Unfortunately, you're nobody in our world. But if you're telling your story because it's directly related to the problem that I'm having as the reader, then yeah, we need to hear it. And we want to hear it because we want the solution that you're offering. And I think it's important for authors to understand that that's what you're doing. Your book is a solution for the reader. And the reader is selfish. The reader and author relationship is completely one-sided on us, the readers. We get everything. You give and we take. That is it. Not sure you get money when we buy the book, but when we pick up the book as readers, the first thing we ask ourselves is, what am I going to get out of this? Why? Am I going to be entertained? Am I going to be informed, educated, inspired? What am I getting out of it? If you can't deliver on that, then this is a useless book for me. So even as you tell your story, if it relates to what the issue they're having is, give it to them. They need it.
No, I love that. And it is one of the pieces of writing that you have to remember, is that it's trying to help the reader do something, accomplish something, see something with clarity that they didn't see before, or experience something, and empathetically be able to understand something they didn't have exposure to, but you did. Like, there's so many different ways that you could use your writing. And I think that when you're talking about it as an asset, we are used to a lot of the times sharing things in short form or video now, because we're on Instagram, or we're doing something on YouTube now, or like whatever. And so it is different to think about it in a written format. Long copy, like a book, is consistently staying with that. This is for you, this is messaging that I'm delivering for a purpose, this is something I'm trying to help make an impact as a vehicle through. And it probably takes a lot longer of an attention span than like creating a 30-second reel.
I mean, yeah, there's like many steps. Of course, it's gonna take more of your attention to put it together, because it's a whole book, man. I mean, anywhere
Yeah.
between 55 to 70,000 words. You gotta give me something, right? Sustenance. I need substance of some sort.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know that's where, thinking about that mentality of being able to continually give and give and give, in a sense of what is that there for the reader, that has to be core, because you're doing long format content creation for a really long time. I've heard of people being like, oh, I've been working on my book for this many years, and then not like even publishing it. So
that just breaks my heart when people do that. I worked with
I
one author
know.
for 40 years. I'm like, yo, why? Like, I get it though. A lot of people go through transformation and then they feel like, oh, I don't want to put it yet because I'm not done with my journey. So they want to wait. But
Then you write it part 2. You do something.
Exactly. Thank you, Wendy. Yes. That's why I tell people, okay, this is part 1. See you part 2.
Yeah. Then you have people, you leave people hanging with the cliffhanger where they're like, well, what happened? You're like, I don't know. I got to go Google it. Like, what happened after this book? It's funny. I think I was like, Eat, Pray, Love. I remember after I read it, I Googled what happened to her life after, because I just felt like I was like, there's more to her life, but I'm not included, and I don't understand, what did she do? And then I was like, oh, okay, this is interesting. It was interesting. All right, y'all. So you're seeing parts of my conversation this morning with Porsche Mysticque Steele, and we're here live in between the different parts of the conversation. I wanted to bring up a couple of things. One, thank you to Sarah Rodriguez for tuning in, and for commenting and saying it's a good point to relate your story to the audience. I think absolutely knowing, who your audience is core. We talk about that in the Uplevel Your Story Challenge. Who are the main audiences that you need to support you, and how can you reach them to get the support that you need to have a sustainable social impact venture? It's a pretty simple concept. Porsche actually breaks this down really nicely in the end of the conversation. So if that's something you're interested in, make sure you tune in until the end. If you have any comments or you want to share your thoughts, jump into the chat. I am here hanging out on all the platforms, chatting behind the scenes as these are playing. We have 2 more segments that each of them, like I said, are about 10 minutes each. And then I'm going to dip into a conversation about using your story for particularly grant funding, and talking a little bit about that with a couple of tips. So stay tuned for more. We're going to go right back into the conversation where we pick up where we left off with Porsche. And then we're going to talk at the end about, tying it all back in together, about social impact, using your story to make a bigger impact, and what exactly are we trying to do as social entrepreneurs when we're sharing our story with our audiences that matter the most. All right, guys, let's hop right back in. This idea of assets and hear from you. Besides books, what other ways do you use to tell your story? Of like, when, like you were saying, TEDx is another example of something you're doing this year. But what other things do you do in your marketing for your business to tell your story?
Definitely podcasting. But not my own. I'm a serial podcast guest. So I just appear on other people's shows because I don't want the stress of having my own. So being able to just hop on other people's shows and dive into their audiences and tell my story and kind of touch and inspire them. I think that has been really powerful for me and my business. And I met a lot of great people that way. Another thing that I do is guest blogging. I love to do guest posts. Now, I was doing it anonymously at first, which then I realized was so stupid. Like, why would I do that? That's so dumb. I'm not getting anything out of this. But I did it.
That's like SEO fail right there.
I just wanted to slap myself. Like, why would you do that? It's no. Yeah, but guest blogging is a huge one. And then collaborations. That's probably my favorite. Like doing workshops with other people or being a part of summits or conferences. Those things allow me to really just align myself with people who may be doing bigger or better things than I am. And I step into their space and I can learn from them, but I can also kind of jump into their audiences as well. So it's really important to just put yourself out there in as many places as possible.
Oh man, and I know that when I was talking to Dimple Dang in the last interview, this came up too. It's like, when you're first starting to put yourself out there as a business owner, it can be challenging, or people can experience kind of reluctance in saying, not only I don't think people want to hear my story, but maybe it's not relevant or it's not worth people sitting on this live for a half hour to hear, like whatever it is. So how do you coach people through that first process of being like, no, let's get yourself out there so that you can make the impact that you want to make? So how have you been able to work on some of that mindset stuff with the people that you coach?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing we do is really I just listen to them and figure out what is the bottom line, right? Why are they even thinking about publishing a book in the first place? Because that's the key. So a lot of people will tell themselves, "Oh, nobody wants to hear my story," yet you're thinking about publishing a book. You can't have it both ways. So there's something that's causing you to create this objection for yourself. So we have to figure out, why are you putting up this wall? What is it that's forcing you into that? So I find that a lot of people, and setting that objection for themselves, is because they hear other people who have these really ridiculous, tragic, traumatic stories that sound like it should be a Lifetime movie and it's probably going to be on Netflix. And they're like, my story kind of just sucks. So maybe I shouldn't do this. So I I just love the fact that I can see that you didn't really think that your story wasn't great. You thought it was awesome. That's why you thought about publishing a book, but then you came across something and it just kind of stopped you. And that something was that you started to face imposter syndrome. You think your book is now not as, your story is now not as great as theirs. I worked with one author in particular. She was like, I had a great childhood. My parents weren't divorced. I had siblings. We were good. We didn't struggle. I went to college, all this stuff, but I still had struggles in my life. And I'm afraid to publish my story because people are going to be like, oh, we don't want to hear this. This is kind of boring. And that's what I say, no. Do you know how many women feel that exact same way? How many women feel like their stories aren't important because they weren't abused or because they were like, and it's just, the idea is crazy. It's like, you feel like your story isn't good enough because you didn't go through some sort of trauma. You should feel like you're winning, actually, but okay. But I had to let her know that your story still needs to be heard because there's a lesson in it. And that's all it is, right? When we tell our story, it's so that we can deliver a lesson or a message. So no matter where you've come from or the story you've had, it's a message that you're delivering, the lesson that you're delivering, and people will always need to hear that.
No, I think that's really good. And also, you don't have to go through something traumatic in order to be relevant. Like, I think that's a really important message. Like, people would rather not go through trauma. And I think our goal into doing a lot of impact-based work is to help people not experience some of the things that we have had to go through. So by sharing your story, you're helping people inherently not experience those things eventually. You're going to get a lot of people who are like, yeah, I went to college and it wasn't that hard because a bunch of these other older brown people paved the way for me to be able to do that without any consequence, right?
Absolutely.
Like, yeah, like I think that that's really the goal, is kind of working yourself out of the job. But in thinking about that and how you've worked with all of these different people through those kind of mindset shifts, or through understanding that their story will yield success, how do you then see, like, give us like an example of what that transformation looks like when people start seeing themselves winning with their book? Like, does that like really cool when people start actually seeing their bank account with the money, and the people like recognizing their book and asking them to sign it? Like, what is that like?
It's so funny because they almost don't recognize it. Like, I have to tell them, look at how far you've come, because it's hard to see, because we have in our mindset that, oh, we're going to get all this recognition simply because we published a book and we sold a bunch of copies. That usually doesn't happen, right? A lot of people will say, I'm not expecting to get rich off of my books. Of course you're not. Nobody, not even Stephen King himself, could get rich off of just book sales alone. You have to leverage it. So that's why Stephen King has master classes, he has courses, he has TV shows, he has movies, he has other people doing podcasts for him, all this stuff. He's leveraging his book in different ways. So for my authors, what happens to them is, after they published it, opportunities start appearing out of nowhere for them. And it's one step at a time. So they don't recognize that it's a culmination of all these different things that's coming together to boost their career. Right. So I'll give you an example. So one of my authors, we had published our book last year, and for whatever reason, she was able to collaborate with people like Alicia Keys. And it was incredible for her. The next thing you know, her book was being asked to be premiered at the Colorado Museum. And then a coffee shop wanted it. And then just a couple weeks ago, somebody ordered 50 signed copies of her book. Now, if she were to look at it linearly, she would just be like, oh, this happened and this happened and this happened. And I had to say, look at your whole journey. Look at what has happened since you published it. It's only when you look at that whole picture do you really understand the success that you've had. But it's hard to see it as you're going through it, because it's just one, it comes at you one at a time.
And you're probably just chugging along with the process, right? Like, just, okay, let me show up, let me keep showing up, let me keep showing up and see what happens. And then you don't realize how much progress you've made. We talk about this actually in the first season of my podcast, in the Social Impact Level Up podcast. It's like you're incrementally getting to live your vision, but because your new reality has changed, you don't recognize that new reality, in contrast to where you were before. You were like, I want to be there, but you didn't know what there would look like. And then you got there and you're like, oh, I forgot about where I was before.
Right. Oh my God, that's beautifully articulated. That's true.
Yeah, and it's hard because you're incrementally starting to live the vision of the life that you're putting together for yourself. And so as you're kind of incrementally manifesting it and your energy is starting to change, you almost no longer recognize the other state of being where you used to be before. And it's, and it's a cool process to see when people are successful at it, because you're like, yeah, that it also, when you surround yourself with people who are going through that process and you see people being successful at it, it helps you stick with the process and be successful yourself. So it is cool to be like in a community of folks who are doing this. Because then you're like, oh, I saw that person over there winning, or I saw this person over here winning, and they can do it, I can do it. So I would keep going.
You have to be careful with that one, right? Because people who suffer from imposter syndrome will be in that same community, and instead of seeing it as, oh, I can do it too, they'll see it as
a comparison.
Yeah. Then right, you start comparing, and you feel like maybe you're not living up to your standards or whatever.
Yeah, and that's why we go through all of this discussion about having a growth mindset and how to stay in the right perspective so that you can continue to grow and not be comparing yourself to these other people, because everybody's going to be on their own journey. Like your journey will not look like anyone else's journey. It is
Absolutely.
like fact number 100. We cannot seem to replicate every single living condition of another human to get the same exact outcomes and experiences that they've had. It's not
Very true.
possible.
Yeah.
Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying this conversation, because I really had a great time talking to Portia, and it was just thinking back about how we went all over the place but really stuck to the idea that your story is your asset, right? That is the thing that you can use to leverage master classes, to leverage TED Talks, to get on podcasts, to share your experience, and to help people to learn and grow through what you've been through. So we're going to do a little quick lesson, get right into the workbook, because I didn't preview the workbook for the Uplevel Your Story Challenge last time, and I should have. But instead, I'm just going to share my screen really quickly and show you guys this. Let's see, here we go. We are going to take a look at two things tonight. In the middle of talking to Portia, I want you guys to be thinking about a couple of things, and these come directly from the challenge. So if you don't have the workbook, hop in the challenge. It'll get delivered directly to your inbox with a couple of videos each week to go through the concepts that we're talking about on the lives. So you're not missing anything by the lives. You're actually getting extra things on top of the lives. So the first thing is thinking about your assets. I talked about this in the beginning segment with Portia. What are the assets that you have access to that are your area to grow and show people exactly what impact that you're making? And in this last segment, Portia and I get into some maybe do's and don'ts about how you convey that message. So your social media channels, we all think about assets a lot of times now as social media. That's a given. But what else can you use to demonstrate to people that you're doing amazing work and they should be supporting you? Whether they're supporting you as clients or coming to you with donations, whatever you need, volunteers, like whatever you're looking for. These are the assets that you can use to gather that support. And Portia ends with a couple of beautiful messages about that. So your email list, if you have an email list or an active newsletter somewhere on a particular platform, I have a newsletter on LinkedIn. It's a really great platform to have a newsletter on. You could have a group or a membership, maybe the Facebook group or some other community that you run. There's in-person events, online events, any kind of social audio events or social audio engagements, podcasts. Like we talked about a bunch of these today. A lot of these assets are things that you can devise a plan on how you are going to share your message on these particular assets. Each one might require a different plan. So you might want to think really heavily on which of these do you want to focus on, and then get really good at focusing in that particular area. And then the next question to think about from this week is, what assets do you actually need? So this is the second part of the question I asked early in the episode. Assets, yes, can be on one hand the things that we leverage in order to share our messages, but assets also are likely what we need to keep doing our work, right? What money, grants, any opportunities financially to continue to do what we're doing, new clients, new contracts, all of that stuff. So asking yourself, what assets do I need to continue to do what I'm doing or to get to the level that I aspire to get to, right? What is my aspirational vision? How do I fund that? How do I get there? You can use your story to do that, but you have to really know, what assets are you seeking and from whom, right? Who are you telling this story to in order for them to really hear you, be inspired by you, support you, and then eventually help you with this question of, how do I secure the appropriate assets that I need, right? So do I need new clients? Do I need new donors? Do I need new supporters? Do I need particular streams of funding or particular types of grants that achieve a particular mission? Do I need to get a larger referral network? Or do I need to have affiliates or people who are part of an affiliate marketing program for my products? Do I need to rekindle some of my existing relationships that I already have with my supporters or donors, right? So, what assets are you looking for, and who can help you acquire those assets? Those are the questions for you to think about as we go into this last segment where we talk to Porsche about what does it really mean to be an impact organization, sharing your story and looking for assets or looking for resources, and how could you do that in a way that really is going to be beneficial to you. So let's hop right back into our stream. And like I said, if you are interested in joining the Uplevel Your Story Challenge, I'll put the URL back up. It's available on my website at wendyvelos.com/events, and you can hop in until the end of the month. So if you're not in there with us now, please join us soon. All right, here we go. To this idea of assets and hear from you. Besides books, what other ways do you use to tell your story? Of like when, like you were saying, TEDx is another example of something you're doing this year. But what other things do you do in your marketing for your business to tell your story?
Definitely podcasting.
Sorry about that. I think you already saw that one. And now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, we already saw this podcasting one. Let me add into the stream. Hopefully it's the correct video file for, let's see. I think this is it. All right. It might start the same. Let's get going. Talk to you about, here we go. Which like I think is more from, I do have a lot of people who follow me internationally, but I think from a more international sense of how are we using our stories to get support for things that make an impact, to support communities. I know you're in Nigeria. You probably see the need every day for organizations that support orphans, organizations that support health causes, like all these different things. Thinking about those kinds of organizations, what kind of advice would you give to somebody who's trying to start an impact-driven organization on how they can use the story of the cause that they're talking about or the thing they're passionate about? Like, how can they start working with that to be able to make a difference or to get more assets or to whatever their goal is?
Right. That's a good question because story is everything, and I like to say that story is the syrup that makes information sticky. So when you have this dream or organization that you want to put together, you have a mission. In order to get people to buy in, I guess, which is not the right term, but to enroll themselves into that mission with you, you have to have that element of story to create the emotion so that people feel it. But I noticed that a lot of people will try to use hype or trauma or tragedy to make the story sticky, which is not necessary. So let's use Nigeria as an example. So if somebody says that they have an organization or a mission and they want to fund orphans for something, and they want to come to Nigeria and take pictures and stuff. Well, let me tell you, Nigeria is far more developed than people realize. And you're not going to come to Nigeria and just start taking pictures of orphans. You're not going to find them. It's going to be difficult. So, I think that people need to first be realistic in that story. Don't try to find a sob story and, put a spin on it and embellish it to make it stick with individuals. I think what I really like about this generation of business owners and thought leaders, movers and shakers, and even disruptors is that they're all about realness and honesty and authenticity. So the moment you come through with the old Africa videos that we used to see on commercials, it's like, no, you can go somewhere with that. We know that it doesn't actually look like that anymore. Thank you, TikTok and Instagram. We know now that a lot of African countries are doing pretty okay, better than most US cities. So you just want to be realistic in the story that you're telling. Avoid embellishing, but still be vulnerable. And I think for people who have those missions, talk from your own perspective. And I think far too often do people try to dive in somebody else's life or somebody else's story and tell that person's story to push a movement. No, this is your movement that you want to create, something that you want to do, then it should come from your own story, your own experiences. So if you're trying to help poverty or something like that, if you yourself didn't come from a place of poverty, talk about the fact that you did not come from a place of poverty, but you witnessed it here or there, or it affected you this way or that way. Just be real and tell your story and not somebody else's.
And I used to always see the big, like there's, several big charities that operate in all of the countries, right? And you always see their vehicles. I'm sure I could name like 4 of them and you'd be like, yeah, I saw that truck and that truck and that truck last week. Like they're everywhere when you drive around and you're always like, but where are the people they're helping? Like, where are they where are they driving to these orphans that people are paying $60 US or $60 Canadian a month to support? And are they actually getting this, what percentage of that money are these people actually seeing who are enrolled in said program? Like there was always these, questions in my mind about some of these tactics that big organizations use. But I think even small organizations, like you said, like they could be in a genuine way telling their story about their impact mission on their website, in their email marketing, and like all these different digital assets that they might have. But it has to be genuinely the impact that you're making, not a made up story, not another organization's work, not something you did super long ago in the past and you haven't done anything since. like super legit with the story that you're telling, because that's how you demonstrate a continued impact that you're making over time, and compare it to the story you told before, right? So if you were saying, before we were only able to do XYZ thing, now according to, being able to have more donations, grants, blah, 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 we can do this. And this is what we did last year, really giving actual data from your organization. Like those are easy wins that you could use in order to communicate your impact and your story. But instead you find people, like you were saying, looking for the most sob version or just like a particular slant that it's going to pull at the heartstrings. But is that really going to create any kind of security, deep connection, trust, like those kinds of things that you need for people to reoccur and give you money?
Absolutely. And I think you have to be very intentional about who you're pitching to, right? So if you're pitching your idea to major corporations, those sob stories might actually work because that's what they're after, right? They're all worried about reputation and image. So as long as you include some diversity, throw some of those fancy words in there, they're like, oh, we're on board because we want to look awesome. But if for you it's really about impact and global transformation, then I would be very intentional about who you decide you want to secure funding from. And I love that we're in an age where crowdfunding is a thing. And so I'm not saying go to GoFundMe.com and do it, but there are real world people, real life individuals who are investors. They live to be angel investors and they love to invest in things that they believe in. So you want to find those people that simply want to fund a project that speaks to them, that maybe they want to have a part of their legacy. Find those individuals. And when you do, understand that they're not going to be worried about image and reputation. So they don't need the sob story. They just need your real story.
Your real story and your ability to take action and produce on the outcomes that you're saying you can. There's that. Can never forget being able to produce the outcomes. Let's be real clear.
Absolutely.
That's funny. Well, this is such a fun conversation. I super love you for being part of this, and just wanted to celebrate and lift up again some of my friends who do other things I don't do in the space of marketing and supporting people, because it's all about being sustainable. And being a sustainable women-owned business does not mean do everything yourself. That is fact number one. Yes. In the last live, Dimple said, like, don't be Wonder Woman syndrome over here thinking you could do everything yourself. I was like, there is no way I could do a month of lives talking about storytelling with my level of what I want to talk about. So I'm going to just invite all my friends to come and join, hang out on my platform, like you said, and then let's just rap about what you're doing. And so the last question I had for you is just giving you space to honor that and talk about, people already have heard your process, heard kind of what you do, but if you could give your little like 30 seconds spiel, whatever your pitch is, tell folks where can they find you, who wants to, who should be working with you, and how can they get a hold of you. And that way, if folks who are listening to the live this evening get to hear, what your fabulousness is all about, and they want to check in with you, how do they do that?
That's awesome. Yeah, like I said, I work with coaches. So if you've been a coach for over 5 years and you're ready to level up in your business, take yourself and your career to that next level so you can step into thought leadership, or you're ready to ride that elevator up to the penthouse with the elites, then you know you need a book. If you're ready to take that step, then you can reach out to me, Porsche Mysticque. You can email me at info@mystiquerosepublishing.com, or you can just Google search my name, Porsche, spelled like the car, Mystique with a C, that's Mysticque Steele. You can find all of my socials.
All right, everybody. This has been a really, really fun conversation with Porsche Mysticque Steele. And she was just saying, find her on any social media platform. I think the video cuts off right at the end. And I think the last part, I just was razzing her about how amazing her pitch is. I was like, man, you have practiced this in the mirror a lot of times. So I don't want to leave that out. She is really good at what she does. So if you guys are at all interested in some of the stuff that Porsche has mentioned on tonight's live, definitely reach out to her. She's been tagged in a bunch of the posts, and we have 2 more lives coming up. So this whole month, I wanted to do this series of 4 lives focused on up-leveling your story and giving people the opportunity to come and ask questions, drop comments, and think through, how do these principles that these experts are talking to you about, how do they apply to what you're doing and the impact that you want to make? So as you're formulating your content, as you're thinking about your presence online, as you're thinking about how you're planning to share your story, maybe you're going to write a book, maybe you're going to go get on a bunch of podcasts like Porsche suggested, whatever that is for you, this is just a time for you to think about those strategies and to start figuring out what to put in place, right? And so hopefully these lives are a time for you to come in, check in, get some information, and then go off and reflect in between the next one. Definitely want to hear from you guys. We have 2 more on Mondays. I messed up the graphic, y'all, and it looked like everything was today, but no, there's 2 more Mondays. Next Monday, we will be talking with my friend Shay Conley, and then we will talk in the last Monday of the month at 7:30 p.m. Eastern with Michelle Hui. I don't know how to say her last name. I will find out before we go. So these are going to be 2 of my guests that are also talking about impact storytelling, but really from a different lens. Michelle's going to talk about your brand and connecting deeper with the audiences that you want to support you. And Nishay is going to talk a little bit more about some of the community building and some of the options of how we can use our story in some advanced techniques. And it's really cool because she actually has a MPH and a certified health education specialist designation, or CHES, I guess is what you call them. And she talks about this stuff all the time in her business. So really excited to have both of them joining me for the next 2 lives. And they will be here. It won't be recorded next time. They will be here live so you can chat with both of us. And that's it for tonight. So I'm excited to have you guys here. Excuse me. Oh, I'm already like choking at the end of the live. Somehow I always choke at the end of these lives, y'all. I'm super excited to have you guys joining us. If you have been here for the entire live or you watched a portion of this, thank you for joining us and for being part of the community. Our newsletter on LinkedIn is just about to hit 5,000 people, which is really exciting. So if you're not one of our subscribers on our newsletter, get over there, look at all the articles that I post. They're all about social entrepreneurship, full of tips, full of resources. And lastly, stay tuned for the Social Impact Level Up podcast. Season 2 is coming in March, and we've done a bunch of amazing interviews with people just like the one that you saw today, and we'll be airing them and sharing them all throughout the rest of the year. So if you are interested in social entrepreneurship, this is the place. Join us in the Social Impact Level Up Collective through one of these places, our podcast or newsletter, or find us on Clubhouse. All right, everybody, good to see you tonight. Have a wonderful evening, and hopefully we'll see you again on another one of the lives in the next couple of Mondays coming up. Bye, everybody.